In this video, I'm going to show you how to create your own custom configure price quote tool for your company in a matter of minutes. To do this, we'll be using tools like Gemini, Claude, and Bolt, and that will allow us to build custom applications like this, or like this in a matter of minutes. My name is Patrick Byrne. I'm a manufacturing engineer turned data scientist, and now I help manufacturing companies use AI to create custom software that has huge ROI. What we'll cover in this video is briefly why a CPQ tool is important for your manufacturing company, how to use Gemini and Claude to create the framework and structure of your application, and then finally, how to use Bolt to create the application itself. Okay, so now that you've seen a demo, what are the benefits of CPQ tools for manufacturers? I'm going to be very quick with this because I think you can already understand what most of the benefits are going to be here, which is why you're watching this video. So increasing quote speed by about 10x. So you can send your quotes in a few minutes rather than in a few days. Reducing the lead time or the approval time of getting quotes through the door. Obviously, if you have a lot of customizations and stuff like that, quotes can take a long time to be approved. They might need to be approved by engineering and by other people in the business. So ROI on these sorts of things is huge. You can reduce the amount of human intervention or human time by way more than 50%. This is just going to be a conservative estimate, getting quote accuracy significantly higher than you would get by having humans do it. Often manufacturing companies sell through agents, not even necessarily through their own salespeople. And that means that they often get mistakes in their quotes. And you can also protect your margins by making sure that you're actually appropriately allocating the material costs and so on when you're doing your quotes. Some of the benefits here, obviously, manufacturing companies are having difficulty finding people at the moment. So the more that you can automate these sorts of processes, the more you can scale the amount of quotes that you can send out to customers. The faster you can approve these quotes means you're going to have less bottlenecks in terms of quotes that need to be reviewed, and you can just continue to increase capacity without adding more staff, which is obviously really important right now when there's 450,000 plus jobs available in the US in manufacturing that cannot be filled by people. So what are some of the benefits outside of what we just talked to? What do those things that we talked to lead into? Well, higher conversions. If you can send your quotes faster, if you can send more professional quotes, if you give the customer a better experience in building that quote, you're going to sell more. We've seen customers increase their conversion rates by over 30%, meaning that they sell more, meaning that they have less in terms of a cost of acquisition of customers. And then overall, allowing your customer to make faster decisions, reducing the time of that sales cycle, which can often be very long in the manufacturing space. Finally, then on the reasons for this and the benefits of this, some of the things that you can do downstream is you can start to auto-generate BOMs. So you can create those automatic parts lists and component lists. You can also start to create automatic spare parts lists, which I talk about in the most recent video that I put up on the channel. You can accelerate manufacturing because you're moving to a more streamlined and more optimized and standardized manufacturing process based on having more standardized equipment sales. And you can make sure that you've got more of the right materials on hand, reducing that inventory cost because you're selling more standard equipment. End result of all this is you make more money, your customers are happy, downstream, all of these things are really positive. So moving into the tech stack that we're going to use to build out your custom CPQ tool. There are 3 tools. First tool is Claude, second tool is Gemini, and the third tool is Bolt.new. Instead of using Claude, you could use ChatGPT, you could use Grok if you really wanted to. I like Claude. I think that its reasoning models are really good at creating structures for code and creating detailed instructions to use for other models. In my opinion, the Claude models are the best at writing. Secondly, Gemini 2.5 Pro, in my opinion, in May 2025 is the best tool for creating detailed instructions for building applications. Few reasons for that. It has the biggest context window, so you can give it a ton of information, whether that's information from your own product lines and so on. You can put all of that in here, make sure that it creates that tool as you want it. Finally, another reason for it is it's one of the most up-to-date in terms of when it was trained up until, I believe it was trained up until mid-January of 2025. meaning that all the code libraries, all of the backend integrations and everything that it has in its knowledge base are as close to up to date as you can get. So it generally doesn't give you as many bugs when you're writing code. Finally, then Bolt.new, you could use Lovable, you could use Claude. There's a lot of different systems like this that do a very similar purpose. The way that we do things is we usually build front-end examples, things like that we can build really quickly in Bolt. Then we go to something like Cursor when we want to actually build that out into a fully fledged application rather than just an MVP or as like a demo. So a lot of our demos we build in Bolt, and then we move into something like Cursor when we're building more fully fledged applications that we're going to deploy. I'm not going to go into too much detail on how you can deploy this app. And the reason for that is there are too many different variations. You could want to run this on your website. You might want to run this only locally on laptops and tablets that your team can bring to customers. You might want something that's just running in the cloud behind a paywall or behind a login page. So because of that, I'm not going to go into too much detail. You might want to deploy this on AWS. You might want to deploy this on Azure. We're not going to go into all that complexity. I just want to show you how you build the first example of this application so you can show it to your team, you can get some buy-in, and then you can go from there. So how do we get to the point of actually building an application like this? Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to come up with a set of instructions for our models that are going to start to build out our framework for building this application. I'm going to use an example here. In this section, I'm going to talk about an example for a CNC company. I can't use an example of a real customer that we've done this for. Obviously, manufacturing companies are pretty private when it comes to their internal tools. They don't want to be telling the competitors how they're making more money or how they're improving their services unless they really need to. So we will be using an example here of a CNC manufacturer that I am making up. Okay, so this is the initial prompt that I'm going to use for Claude. It took a couple of minutes to write this out, so obviously I'm going to skip that so you don't have to see it. But essentially what we're getting it to do is creating the framework for a CPQ tool for manufacturing company of CNC machines, getting it to build it out as a demo, so we're not looking too much at the role-based access or back-end permissions and stuff like that. We want this to be mostly just a front-end example. What you're going to get now from Claude is going to create our structure, and then we're going to give that information to Gemini to build out the actual developer information, so the information that the developer needs to use. So this is going to be structure, then Gemini is going to do the actual specific descriptions of what we want the application to look and feel like. And then from that point, we're going to go directly into Bolt. Okay, cool. This is going well so far. No hiccups so far. So let's go to Gemini. Okay, now we've got our prompt figured out. So I'm just going to give you a bit of an idea of what this prompt contains so far. So this prompt in Gemini is essentially telling it to create a CPQ tool for a fictional company manufacturing space that it's a CNC manufacturer. I want it to come up with 3 core products that have 10 options on each, and it should be able to give you the option to essentially start off with a base and then add additional options, which are upgrades that come as an additional charge. Then I'm asking it to come up with pricing for all 3 of the machines, as well as the ability to get the BOM to come out of the machine afterwards. Okay, I think we're pretty much there. And from this point, we're going to get Gemini to go and start thinking through how to create this for us. Something to consider when you're using these models is when you're using something like Gemini, which is a thinking model, it is essentially a thinking or reasoning model. People usually use those words interchangeably, but essentially, if you tell it to think really deeply and to take its time, often it will think for longer. The longer these models think, the better the output that you generally get. That's essentially the way that works. Okay, so we've got our result here from Gemini. So Gemini has gone through and created all of the design principles for our CNC quoting CPQ tool. As you can see, all of the options, it's come up with lots of different ways, lots of different instructions in terms of how the pricing engine, the quote generation, the BOM generation, and all of those things should work, as well as all the information related to the actual product and options itself. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to copy and paste that into Bolt. I just made sure that we got some additional information on the color scheme just to make sure that we get the appropriate type of colors. and the appropriate system for being able to see all the colors, because these tools don't necessarily have a great understanding of color contrasts and that sort of thing. So sometimes the text doesn't come out very good. So as you can see, Bolt is starting to come up with the structure, and now it's going to start writing some code. So something to note about the improvement and the ability of AI to write code now is that a couple of years ago, these tools were struggling to write more than 250 lines of code. If you could get it to write 250 to 500 lines of code, that was really good. As you can see, it's created maybe like 20 files here, and each of these files is going to have somewhere between a couple hundred lines and maybe 500 lines of code. So what that means is that these tools are getting better at an exponential rate. They're getting so much better every day, every week, every month. And what that means is that you will probably never have to pay for a one-size-fits-all SaaS from a big SaaS company ever again. In my opinion, every piece of software that a manufacturing company is going to use in about 5 years from now is going to be fully custom, built in-house, potentially built by a software development company for them, but not necessarily built by a big SaaS company that sells the same platform to every customer. Why do I think that's going to be the case? Well, I think it's pretty obvious that the SaaS options that have been available to the manufacturing industry over the past 10 or 20 years have not served the industry. They've made it more difficult for everyone to really perform the job functions that they need to. It's a problem when you build a one-size-fits-all SaaS solution and you expect a manufacturing company to use it. You also expect law firms to use it and finance companies and all sorts of things. Then on the other side of, if you talk about the more manufacturing specific ERP systems, then you're building something that is the same system for a pharmaceutical manufacturer as well as for a machinery manufacturer. And obviously they have very different workflows, very different manufacturing processes, very different products, and so on. Now, with the ability of AI to write software, you are never going to be stuck with a one-size-fits-all solution again. You can have something that actually performs the function perfectly for what you need it to do. And this CPQ tool that you're going to see come up on the screen in just a minute is the prime example of that, right? Your machines are not the same as somebody else's machines, and your processes are not the same as somebody else's processes. You probably have different integrations that you need. You might need to integrate to Epicor. Somebody else might want to integrate to SAP or Encompass or whatever ERP or system that you're using on the back end. So for somebody to build a one-size-fits-all CPQ tool, there's a whole lot of stuff that they have to do there. They have to hire a bunch of devs. They have to hire a bunch of people to deploy the applications. They need to hire kind of what people are calling forward deployed engineers, who have to go and actually find the information and start to generate that tool. And what basically happens then is you end up with an extremely expensive software system that doesn't even really perform the function as well as something that you could do custom. So that's my little rant on custom software versus SaaS tools. I believe that in a couple of years, every manufacturer could have a CPQ tool like this. And nowadays you can build one of these for, I wouldn't like to give an exact price on it, but probably a tenth of what it would have cost you 5 years ago. It was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to build something like this before, and it's not in the hundreds of thousands of dollars anymore. Let's just put it that way. One of the customers that we work with, we are building this out for them at the moment. They have an extremely complex product line. I would find it difficult to believe that anybody is going to have more complexity in their product line than this company. They've got hundreds of options on each of the machines. Oh, wow. Okay. So it's giving me a tour of the CPQ tool. Let's see how this works. Select a product family, choose a machine, configure a machine, apply discounts, generate a quote, save configurations so I can revisit them later. Wow. Okay. This is better than I was expecting. The interesting things about these are sometimes you can just regenerate and you can get a slightly different version of the tool than you would have maybe looked at before. So it's a milling machine, CNC lathe, and CNC router. So the CNC now Spark Mill, base price of $8,000. Obviously in this here, you would be able to build in a 3D model of your machine, or you could even just have product pictures, lots of different ways that you can do that. You can see that it's giving all of the machine capabilities, the work area, everything like that is sketched out here. And then you get all of the technical specifications down here. Let me just open this up in the full window here so you get a better view of it. Okay, so as you can see then, when you make a change here, it makes a change to the machine capabilities and the technical specifications. It's also going to show you the base machine price plus all of the options, as well as the option to put a discount code in. Obviously, you don't need to have that on your machine if you don't want to, or in your CPQ tool if you don't want to. And obviously, this is all demonstration, right? Anything that you can imagine, you can create in a tool like this. You could create your dream scenario CNC machine or your dream scenario CPQ machine by doing it this way, rather than having to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to external consultants and so on, and software developers and all of that sort of thing. You can get to a pretty decent MVP of something like this just on your own. So let's just have a quick look and see if the discount code works. I'm just actually curious more than anything, and it does work. Okay, cool. So I want to generate a quote. I'm assuming this is name. The thing about these tools, when you build them the first time, they're always going to have some little errors. As you can see, it's not giving enough padding up on the top of the screen here for me to actually enter or see that it's asking for my name. But I can put my information in here. I can download a PDF based on the quote. Is it going to download it? Sometimes yeah, so I would need to add that functionality in there. But I think what you're seeing here is that the ability to create software used to be something that would just take a really, really long time. Now you can build something like this in a couple of hours, not in a couple of months. Getting to this kind of first stage of building software used to take a really long time, like getting to the structure of the application. Now you can get there in a couple of hours, maybe a few days, if you're taking your time and really making sure that you've got all of your product families lined out and everything like that. But the purpose of this is to show you that building things like this is now possible for anyone. If you're a software developer, great, you might be able to do it a little bit better. Oftentimes what we do at our company is I will get the tool to the first stage, which is this point here. And then I'll hand it off to our software development team, who will go and actually build out the full application, add any features that were missed in the initial stage. They'll make any changes or any bug fixes that will have happened. Like, for example, this should be capitalized. I should be able to, oh wow, it actually creates, that's pretty incredible. But I could make a lot of improvements to this is kind of my point. That's what you need your software developers to do. Getting it to this point is actually really easy. But I hope that's given a pretty decent idea of what you can do with these machines. If you do want to have a look at building your own CPQ tool and you really don't know where to start, shoot me a message. There's definitely a way that we can help you on that. And if there's any other applications that you've always dreamed of being able to build, I'm sure we can help you on that too. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video and seeing how a tool like this could be built. It's been really exciting for me to get to work on this sort of thing. Being able to bring this sort of technology to the manufacturing space is really a pleasure, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how things progress over the next couple of years. If you do want more information on other use cases for AI in manufacturing, there are lots of videos that'll pop up on screen here. I hope you enjoyed this video and got some value from it, and I'll see you in the next one.